is not being recorded as well.
Mayor, speak up.
Now we have to get it now. Go talk up more because you're actually at the club. Yep. Okay, call to order.
Call to order. I hereby announce pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act that adequate notice of this meeting has been transmitted on August 16th, 2018 by the Secretary to the Asbury Park Press, the Independent, the Two River Times, the Township Clerk. It has been posted in the meeting room and in the entrance hall in Town Hall, all pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act.
Roll call.
Mrs. Adler?
Here.
Mr. Hearn?
Here.
Mr. LaPresti?
Here.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Here.
Mr. Nemsick?
Here.
Mr. Bantakis?
Here.
Mr. Pesci?
Here.
Mr. Briamonte? Mrs. Tedesco?
All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Nemsick, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor the military and police who have been wounded or killed in action. Thank you. Please be seated.
Completeness waivers. Item number 5, New Jersey Natural Gas Company, NJNG, 960 Homedale Road, Block 13, Lot 13, in the OL-2 zone. Preliminary and final site plan number 2018-1. Applicant seeks variances to construct a proposed regulator station, access, and utilities located within the 16.51 acre site owned by Homedale Venture LLC, an improved office park and cell tower. If the application is deemed complete, a public hearing will follow.
Good evening, board members. Nancy Skidmore from the law firm of Connell Foley. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, New Jersey Natural Gas Company. This is a continued hearing on the application for preliminary and final site plan approval, which does include conditional use variance and bulk variance approval for a proposed regulator station at 960 Homedale Road, which is located within the OL2 zone of the township. There was a hearing conducted on April 11th. Thereafter, we had hearings scheduled for May, June, July, and August, which were subsequently adjourned. As a matter of housekeeping, we did prepare, publish, and mail a notice to property owners in this regard, and an affidavit of service and publication was given to Ms. Kasha last week. As a reminder, the last meeting on April 11th was a completeness hearing, and after extensive discussion between the board members and the board engineer and the applicant's engineer, the board made a determination that the application was not yet complete, and requested that we provide a number of other items in accordance with the board's checklist. We have since provided all of those items, and we would request that the board would make a completeness determination this evening and permit us to proceed with a public hearing and substantive testimony on the application.
Mr. Flusis?
Yes. Since the April and May hearings, we received some additional information from the applicant.
I'm sorry, sir. They can't hear you.
Since the April and May hearings, we received some additional information from the applicant. Information that we requested in our completeness.
We can't hear you.
We still can't hear.
Maybe hold it a little closer to you.
Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. We received some supplemental information after our completeness review of May 2nd, 2018. In that review, there were 2 items missing, which was a fiscal impact statement and a wetlands letter of interpretation from the NJDP. Since that time, we have received both of those items, and we have reviewed the application again and prepared a new completeness review dated September 10, 2018, indicating that those items have been received and that we do concur with the items that have been submitted, that have been provided, that they're adequate for review, and the items that are not applicable. There are 3 items that have not been submitted, which they have requested waivers for. They are checklist items A5, A6, and H6. A5 is copies of percolation laws or soil tests. A6 are copies of soil removal permits.
We can't hear you.
A6 is copies of soil removal permits. And H6 is drainage calculations. I recommend that the board grant those waivers as they can review the application with the information that's been provided. As we know, there's not going to be any sewer producing facilities produced there. There'll be no soil removed from the site, and there'll be no new drainage improvements. So I believe we can proceed without those items.
Any questions from the board? Someone want to make a motion?
I make a motion that the applicant be complete.
Someone want a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Hearn?
Yes.
Mr. LaCresty?
Yes.
Mr. Lucarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nexler?
Yes.
Mr. Pesci?
Yes.
Mr. Vanantopoulos?
Yes.
Mrs. Abbott?
Yes. Okay, next item.
Public hearing. Item number 6, New Jersey Natural Gas Company, NJNG, 960 Homedale Road, Block 13, Lot 13, in the OL-2 zone, preliminary final site plan number 2018-1. Applicant seeks variance to construct a proposed regulator station, access and utilities located within the 16.51 acre site owned by Homedale Venture LLC, an improved office park and cell tower.
I just want to take a minute and let everyone in the audience know that typically, if you've been to a zoning board meeting before, we stop and allow the audience to ask questions, the public to ask questions after each witness. What I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to have you hold your questions for all the witnesses till the end of the testimony tonight, and then you'll be able to ask your questions at that time to any of the witnesses who have testified today. So I think we're going to try, the applicant's going to try to put on 4 witnesses that cover 5 different areas. So optimistically, we'll try to see if we can get to all of them tonight. We're not going to conclude tonight, so the applicant has informed me they're going to need a second date, and they're going to have additional witnesses to bring on that date. So there'll be no vote tonight, just so everyone in the public understands what I anticipate is going to happen tonight. Okay? If you haven't been here before, then you should know that the public is not allowed to speak at any other time, so you can't interrupt or call out questions, and you'll have that opportunity at the end of tonight to ask questions, and at the very end, before we vote, to make public statements. Okay? The floor is yours.
Again, Nancy Skidmore appearing on behalf of the applicant. For tonight, I do have 4 witnesses. My first witness would be Mr. Craig Sanders. He is the Director of Pressure Measurement and Transmission from New Jersey Natural Gas Company. I also have with me Mr. Mike Antilli, who is our expert engineer from Crest Engineering Associates. I have Mr. Rick Wiener, who is our expert landscape architect from Crest Engineering Associates. And I have Mr. Ed Patenta from Patenta Environmental Consultants, who is our expert in the field of sound and air quality. So if the board permits, I would call my first witness, who is Mr. Sanders from New Jersey Natural Gas.
Yes.
And since it's housekeeping, so Loretta, everything is is fine, and escrow is fine.
Yes.
No board members have a conflict with the applicant or vice versa, they're aware of this.
No, I'm aware of.
We like to swear everybody in just in case there's some questions, so if you have all your witnesses swear, we'll also.
Use the
have
microphone, please.
We're going to swear in all the witnesses at once now, including the board's witnesses, just in case there's a question that requires, so we just ask them all to stand up and there might be some Raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, well, each one of you just state your name and spell your name for the record, and then, just for the record, our professionals also have been sworn in.
Craig Sanders, K-R-A-I-G, S-A-N-D-E-R-S.
Rick Wiener, R-I-C-K, W-I-E-N-E-R.
Ed Potenta, E-D-P-O-T-E-N-T-A.
Michael Quintilli, M-I-C-H-A-L-I-N-T-I-L.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanders, just for the benefit of the board's understanding, you are an employee of New Jersey Natural Gas Company, is that right?
Yes, that's it.
And can you just provide the board with a little bit of your background in the company, your educational experience, and memberships as it relates to natural gas delivery?
Yes.
Yes, I've been employed at New Jersey Natural Gas for almost 20 years, 19 years. I received my civil engineering degree from Stanford University, Stanford, California. I'm responsible for the maintenance and operations of our transmission system, 225 miles of transmission pipeline, 380 control critical valves, over 250 regulator stations, one of which we're discussing tonight. Also our gas control area, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which controls and monitors our systems. And also our liquid natural gas facilities. We have two totaling approximately 0.9 billion cubic feet of storage. I'm also a member of American Gas Association Transmission Operations Group, Supplemental Gas Committee, and Transmission Measurement Groups, and also past chair of the NJUA, New Jersey Utility Association's Operations Committee, as well as the Northeast Gas Association's Transmission Operations Group.
Mr. Sanders, you brought with you tonight an exhibit that I think you're first going to use for purposes of your discussion. I think we pre-marked it as Exhibit A1.
Yes, A1.
And Mr. Sanders, just for the record, can you identify what has been pre-marked as Exhibit A1 for the board and for the public?
This is an overview of our system in the Homedale area. It identifies our transmission pipeline in purple, our highest pressure lines. It identifies in gold or yellow our medium pressure, mid-level pressure pipelines, which operate at about 100 pounds, and also identifies our green, our 60-pound system, which is our distribution system, which delivers the natural gas to the individual meters and customers in Homedale. Also on this exhibit, it describes and shows in the yellow circles here all of the regulator stations. And the regulator stations function is twofold. It's to control pressure and to control flow. What this delivery system does, it takes our natural gas, which is very high pressure, very high flow rates from our transmission companies. Our function is to step the pressures down and reduce the flows until they're suitable for consumers to use at your individual homes. Your individual homes use a pressure approximately 1/4 pound, which is about as much pressure as you can use to blow bubbles into a glass of water. So our function is very critical. We step down our pressures and flows to deliver to the end user customers.
And
This-
just for clarification for the board, you were pointing out that the transmission line is in purple there, and then the, what you call a pump main is in yellow. And the line that we're going to talk about mostly tonight is this line that runs, from the south, where we identify the Vonage site, and all the way up to the north, Hazlitt. That's the area we're going to be talking about, that transmission line there. That also has a pump line on top of it, because it might get a little confusing. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So along South Laurel down through Homedale Road, through Long Fellows Street, down Homedale Road, you'll see two lines there, yellow and gold, which means they're both same grade. Here, on the southern end is the proposed site as well, to tie in the entire picture.
So that transmission line that we were just, or that section of transmission line that we were just referencing, that was upgraded relatively recently by NJ&J. Can you talk a little bit about that and get into a little bit more detail?
Yeah, as part of our, in 2012 and 11 timeframe, as part of our continuous improvement process at the company, we targeted this particular area, about 8 miles, to replace aging pipeline that was installed in the 80s, some sections earlier than that. In conjunction with the increased demand for the Homedale area, and we approved the project, a two-phase project, which was the pipeline, upgrading the pipeline from the existing pressure of 250 pounds to 722 pounds. And as part of that project as well is the regulator station as well, which is what we're here to discuss tonight. Both phases of the project, again, cannot be decoupled. To have the gas available, it needs to be, the pressures and the flows have to be reduced to suitable levels.
So just for clarification, that new transmission line section, that operates at around 722 pounds of pressure, is that right?
Right, that's right.
Okay, and the ultimate goal is to reduce that pressure down to about 60 pounds at the end.
That's correct.
Okay. So as you said, the purpose of this regulator station is to reduce the pressure for purposes of distribution to customers in Homedale and surrounding areas. Okay. One more question. When we talk about this particular station that we're proposing down here, this station will be the first step in the pressure reduction, is that right?
Yeah, this station is, we have various tiers of stations that step the pressure and the flows down. So you're feeding larger areas and increasingly segmenting the areas. This particular station is the first step. We would call it a tier 2 station, primary station which feeds to 100 pounds from 700 pounds. So that would be our first cut from the transmission pressures.
And then the next step, after the pressure is reduced here to about 120, 25 pounds, it gets further reduced to other regulator stations that are shown on that board, is that right?
Yes, so here you'll see various dots which represent the other regulator stations, step-down stations. And their function is to take the gas from 100 pounds and reduce it to 60 pounds. Ultimately, your individual meters in Homedale have a service regulator that steps the pressure down even further to serve their members.
And that's all those green lines there. When we talk about that distribution, those distribution lines, those are the lines that goes in people's houses in here and so.
Yes, that's correct. There's approximately 6,100 residential and commercial meters that we serve in the Homedale area.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about with this exhibit, or do you want to move on to the next one? Okay. So I think, Mr. Sanders, we have another exhibit here.
Excuse me, Mr.
standards. Before you put that on there, can you just indicate where the proposed site is on that illustration?
The proposed site would be on the southern end here near 520, which would be the 961 Hill Road.
Okay, so now what we're referencing is the exhibit that's been remarked A2, and for lack of a better word, is this just kind of a board showing the operation of a regulator station?
Yes, again, we have about 250 regulator stations in our system. In that tier, there are primary and secondary regulators that are tier 2 that reduce pressures to medium pressure, 100 pounds, 250. Of those secondary regulator stations, there are stations that are above ground. The majority of our stations are below ground. So of the 250, there are approximately 33 to 35 above ground stations. This falls into the category of above ground station because it has a secondary function. There are additional functions that we do other than just reduce the pressure. The other stations that we have are kind of set and forget. We set them at a certain pressure and leave them. The primary stations have additional functions. They're special in that they provide the last step that we have before we deliver to our customers. And so there's other functionality there. There would be pre-treatment of the gas, where we clean the gas. Again, we want to deliver the highest quality product to the end user. We have our filters there. We also have our control systems, which tie back into our gas control center in Wall Township. They monitor, the gas control center monitors all of our pressures and flows at the major stations. Primary station is also a control station. So again, remember the function of regulator station is to control pressures and flows. Those two functions. And remotely, our gas control operators, there's additional equipment that we add to these above ground stations to facilitate that function, the remote operation of the station. So they can monitor temperatures, they can monitor inlet pressures, outlet pressures, and flows and capacities of the station as well. So the above ground facilities have additional equipment. This drawing here gives a schematic of one of these above ground stations. And again, another characteristics of the above ground stations would be a higher pressure drop. So you would have a higher pressure drop in a station like this where you have 700 pounds down to 100. One characteristic of natural gas, and I think I mentioned this in other hearings, is that there's a direct relationship between the pressure drop and the temperature. So as you reduce the pressure of a gas, you're also going to reduce the temperature. So in these particular stations where you have a higher pressure drop, you're also going to have associated temperature. Hence, you're going to need additional equipment, which would be a heater, an inline heater, which is a process heater. That heater's function is to make sure that the gas remains at a pressure that can be utilized by our end users. I'll step through the actual operation of the station, but the heater is required here to make sure that we deliver, as we reduce the pressure, that we deliver a temperature, a gas temperature in the 50 degree to 45 degree range. And I'll step you through that process here. The purple line, again, as we use the same symbols here that we used on the previous exhibit, purple, yellow, and green to identify high pressure, medium pressure, and lower pressure. We use different terminology. We call the high pressure transmission. So you'll hear me use those terms interchangeably. The gold, again, is the 100-pound system. The green is the 60-pound system, which is the street level pressure. So most streets would have pressures below 60 pounds. What we first do is we bring our treatment of the gas into play. which would be a filter, scrubber similar to an air filter in your vehicle, or oil filter where we clean the gas. There may be scale from welding and different operations that happen when the pipeline was put in, condensation, et cetera, in the pipeline. We want to make sure that we have the highest quality gas provided for our customers. And again, this is the function of the filter, the scrubbers, to clean the gas, clean the pipeline gas. Because of the pressure drop, the 600-pound pressure drop that we have here, we're going to ultimately have a 40-degree temperature drop. Our gas temperatures somewhat mirror the ground temperatures, so imagine 40, 50-degree ground temperature. You drop 40 degrees out of it, you're at 10 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Freezing temperatures, if there's condensation, etc., in the vicinity, in the pipeline, you have a freezing condition. Everyone who's experienced or knows someone that had freezing pipes in the winter knows that's a very difficult and a troubling situation where you can have a pipe burst and things like that. But from an operational standpoint, we want to make sure that we deliver that consistent temperature gas. So we preheat gas. We raise the temperature of the gas such that it can go through our pressure drop and associated temperature drop. So in this particular instance, we assume that we have 40, 45 degree gas. We raise the temperature up to 90 degrees. The regulator, which is a valve, it actually operates and responds to demand from customers. So for example, if you have more customers using gas, the regulator's function is to open itself a wider orifice to provide more gas, more downstream pressure. As you stop using gas, turn your heater, your thermostats down. As a collective, the demand lowers and the regulator responds. So it would begin to close to respond to that demand. That's what happens with our regulators here. In our design, we ensure from a safety perspective and a reliability standpoint that we have dual runs so that we have a single point of failure can't bring down, again, our quality and our delivery to the customers. So we have multiple regulators there that if there's a single failure, the other regulators will pick up. So that's a point of reliability. You go through your pressure drop and the associated temperature drop. So now you're going from 90 reduced by 40 or 50 degrees into the 100-pound system. And so then further on, you would feed our other, I'm just going to refer back to this drawing again.
Is that A1?
A1 where you see the yellow circles here, they're reflecting other regulators that feed off of the 100-pound system that feed towards the 60-pound system. So the group of regulators work in concert, and so we deliver that pressure and flow to the system in that manner. This is just a generic example, but this is how every regulator station that we have functions.
So I just want to follow up on a couple questions there. If we didn't heat the gas, what could be the outcome of that?
So let's, for argument's sake, we take the heater out of the equation. Again, you have 40-degree gas coming in, reducing down to 0. You're going to cause a freezing condition. You will affect the regulator's operation, malfunction. We have situations where because they're soft goods, seats inside these devices, you can basically stop the travel. You can cause the regulator to freeze in a position so that it can't respond to the downstream demand for additional flow or additional pressure. You can cause overpressure conditions, safety-related conditions, etc., outages. It's just something that, from an industry standpoint, we cannot operate our system in.
And when you say freezing, this freezing condition that can and does occur when a heater is not involved in this process, you're talking about ice encasement in the equipment. Is that right?
Right. For example, as you know, this device is a valve. It's a big valve, and what happens is over time you continue to have that condensation and the temperature being low. You're going to continue to build ice. Essentially, you're developing an ice ball. And later on, we'll discuss some other photos that we have, but the equipment will become encased in ice over time because of the flow, because of the continuous pressure.
And I think you mentioned it, but there is a potential when you have that kind of situation where you have equipment encased in ice that you could have a gas outage. Can you explain to the board how that would be different from a gas outage from your local electric company?
Yes, from a response and restoration standpoint, gas is much different than electricity because of the grid that the electric company has. For the most part, if you have an outage of an area, there may be hundreds of people out there will in block be turned back on. Our system is set up differently from a safety standpoint. You have to visit and touch and reconnect every individual customer. So if we have 100 customers out, we have to individually gas out, which means to purge our lines, which clears them of gas, makes them safe, reintroduce gas into the system, make sure we have no leaks. So it's very labor intensive. The turn-on process is much different and much more lengthy than would be an electricity related outage, where you could turn on hundreds of customers at one time. This process may take days, depending on a number of customers that are out.
And I think you mentioned earlier, but just in case I'm incorrect about that, this station would serve about how many meters in Homedale?
It's about 6,100 meters.
So that could be a lot more customers.
It could be a lot more customers, actual customers.
I want to talk a little bit about the site and why it's suited for this use. Can you describe that to the board? Why in particular is this site especially suited for the use?
Are we going to ask any questions from the board as we go? Or you want us to wait till the end?
That's up to the board. I would prefer it if everything could be at the end, but I don't want to dictate the board's process.
I know, that's what happens. Okay, so my question is on
Use the microphone, please.
Everyone's got to use a mic.
Usually I have a loud voice, so I can hear me. The question I have is on the new system versus how is this, so it's like three questions. How is this done today? How old is the system that you use today? Where is the system that you use today? And has it ever frozen to cause us a gas problem in Homedale?
I'm not clear on the first two parts. I'm clear on the last one. Has it
How
ever
does
frozen?
it work right now? I have gas in my house, it works fine. Why is it working fine? What's happening? How is that working?
Can I clarify your question, Dimitri? The question is, if the phase one improvements were installed in 2011 and 2012.
We can't hear you.
Yes,
We can't hear.
if the improvements were installed in 2011 and 2012, the pressure upgrades bring us up to 722 psi. Why has there not been a problem?
Did you say that number?
122. Why has there not been a problem with the gas mains from then to now?
I'm just going to, thank you for that clarification. I'm just going to interject. We are going to show some photos showing the condition that Mr. Sanders is describing, but we can still do that at a later time. Why don't you explain, Mr. Sanders, what you're doing currently to make sure that everybody still has reliable, safe natural gas service?
Yeah, and fine is relative, right? Everything's fine is relative term. What we're going to do, because it's a physics problem, and again, it's a function of the temperature drop. What we're doing now is we're not running the system at the pressures that we would normally run them. And so what we're doing now is running the regulators that are feeding here. We have a temporary regulator that was installed near the Bonnet site, which is near the end here, which is feeding some of the system now. So that is effective. We're also continuously having to maintain that regulator.
Can I just ask you a quick question about that? That station you're talking about, the temporary regulator station, is underground, is that right?
Yes, it's underground, and again, we're not able to run the system because, again, we're not in the business of causing outages. And so, in order for us to prevent that, we have to work around this particular situation, which means we run the system at a different setting that we normally do.
Can
we give Mr. Sanders a mic? Because,
Yeah.
can we give him a mic, please? Thank you. It's very good. Thank you.
Oh. Okay. Can you hear? We're actually running the system at suboptimal pressures and flows right now. We're actually burdening other regulator stations to take up the slack, so to speak, of this particular site. So we're not running the system to the point that we really need to, because we do not want to cause any situation that would cause an outage with the customer.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Orphanatopoulos had mentioned, well, are you seeing freezing conditions now? And your response to that would be?
Oh, absolutely. I think we showed photos of our freezing regulators in the past. I'm sorry, previous
in the last hearing, and we will show them during
What
this.
we do have is a freezing condition.
Pretend there wasn't another hearing.
I get it.
Okay, because not everyone here was present, and I think by doing that, you're actually making it more.
Okay.
Yes, we do have a freezing situation in that regulator station today. It's encased in ice, a foot or so of ice, and we have some photos that show that today.
And what do you do? We'll show those photos as soon as we get through Mr. Sanders' presentation. But what do you do in the instance when you have that freezing condition on the equipment in the underground station, temporary underground station at the Vonage site?
So, in order to prevent any issues from occurring or exacerbating, is that we do send our crews out routinely to ensure that there is no malfunction in the facility. We also heat that unit. We use portable heaters. Somebody said hair dryers, but a huge hair dryer, so to speak, where we have to melt the ice, and we do that on occasion throughout the coldest periods of time. And if we do have an issue with maintenance on the system, but we do continuously have to monitor this site, which is very ineffective for our crew guys as well.
But Mr. Sanders, why isn't that temporary fix sustainable over time? Because I think that's what Mr. Orphanatopoulos is getting to. Why isn't that sustainable over time?
Well, again, from a practical standpoint, having to thaw this regulator out on a regular basis is not sustainable. But again, if you consider that if you have a cold spell, talking about multiple days of cold, 4, 5, 6, 7 days of cold, you actually end up, even outside the regulator, freezing the piping downstream. We have a control valve, a shutoff valve that's downstream that's inoperable. If we have an issue with the system, it would prevent, if we did have an outage, it would prevent us from responding to the issue in a manner that would be acceptable to today's standards. So we're talking about an hour or two to thaw the regulator out. We have to dig up a valve which is buried downstream, because again, the longer duration of time that you have this sustained cold, the more draw you have, and the the more freezing effect you'll have on that regulator station. So for us to continue to man that on a round-the-clock basis is impossible for us to do